Hello everyone and welcome back for some more Drag Race gossip, secrets and drama. So I thought today it'd be fun to go through some Drag Race rumours and some backstage tea that maybe you didn't know about, including Pheromone's reveal that she didn't do, Gigi Good's apparent almost disqualification, and the Puerto Vallarta scandal. All that and more coming up in today's video, so let's get started. So many of you may be aware of something called an iceberg chart, which is basically a chart that, as you can imagine, has an iceberg. And the idea is that it's about a topic, and obviously with an iceberg, you only see a little bit at the top and then the most of it is at the bottom. And it's basically for a topic, meaning that at the top layer of the iceberg are the things that most people know about, common knowledge. And as you go further down the iceberg, that's when it becomes a bit more obscure, things that people don't know about. So I'm going to start from the top of the iceberg and work my way down, and I'm going to talk you through some of the rumours and backstage tea that have been circulating for a long time about Drag Race. So we're going to start at the top of the iceberg, which is things that most people know. And looking around at different icebergs, I sort of took little bits from different places and then also added some of my own in there as well. So for the first one, we're going to talk about multiple endings. What that means is, I have talked about this before, I'm sure most people know that when a winner of Drag Race wins, then you have the final three or the final four, however many it is, all of them actually film themselves winning, and then in the end, in the final edit, they only use the one person's footage that actually won. And we know that this is true because multiple queens have talked about it, and the reason they do it is because in previous seasons, like season 3, when Raja won, because they didn't do this multiple winning footage, it was actually leaked that Raja won by Perez Hilton, I believe. And so they started doing this thing where each of them pretend to win and do a speech and everything, but then they only actually choose the one queen who won for the final broadcast. And that means that even the finalists themselves don't know who won. And some of the people who didn't win, their footage has since been leaked. And I have talked about this in other videos. For example, Naomi Smalls and Kim Chi from season 8.
Is there anything you'd like to say?
Then we have Tyra. So Tyra, this has come up in a lot of different icebergs, which is why I included it. Tyra refers to Tyra Sanchez, who's the former name of the person who won season 2 of Drag Race. They now go by James William Ross or King Tyra, I believe. And Tyra, or now known as James Ross, has become a little bit of a sort of controversial figure in Drag Race because of a lot of things that happened. For example, they threatened to bomb DragCon one year, or at least it was perceived that they were threatening to bomb. They put a thing on their website saying, "Don't go to DragCon," and then there was a countdown timer on their website that said boom. And there was also they released a fake obituary for Morgan McMichaels saying that Morgan was dead. And they also apparently released Tatiana's personal phone number online. And because of that, Tyra has been sort of seen as quite a controversial person within the Drag Race world and is no longer really associated with Drag Race. And Tyra has also said they don't want to be associated with Drag Race anymore. And then finally, for the top tier of the iceberg, we have Willem's disqualification. Again, I have talked about this before. I think it's quite common knowledge. So on season 4, Willem, who competed on season 4, got disqualified. And it was quite a big thing at the time. It was very unusual. No one really saw it coming necessarily. And on the show at the finale, they made out like Willem had actually been disqualified because she was receiving conjugal visits from her husband. But Willem has since confirmed that that was actually untrue, and Willem just went along with that to make the producers happy because it made each side look okay and doesn't really badmouth either side. But apparently what actually happened was Willem wanted to get kicked off because she was booked to go and do a musical in New York, I believe. And so she was deliberately breaking the rules. She was calling out producers for not knowing queens' names. She was calling out dangerous conditions on set, not enough food for the contestants, things like that. And Willem also apparently slept with a producer, and there was this whole sort of mess. And so Willem actually wanted to get kicked off. It was not really a disqualification, it was a deliberate disqualification. So the next level down on the iceberg, we have Sharon Needles' crown. Again, I have talked about this, but Sharon Needles obviously won season 4. And there was a rumor for a long time that Violet Chachki, who won season 7, had apparently stolen Sharon Needles' crown. And no one really knew exactly at the time what was actually going on or where this rumor started. And Trixie Mattel did mention this in the reading challenge briefly on season 7.
Violet, I don't believe the rumors. I don't believe you took Sharon Needles' crown. I don't believe you're taking this one either.
But Violet actually confirmed years later what happened, and so did Sharon in various interviews. And effectively what happened was that Sharon was judging a pageant, and she was wearing her season 4 crown, because that's the tradition when you are judging a pageant. And then Violet Chachki said she was friends with these people, and when they left, I think they were at the pageant and then they sort of left. And apparently one of Violet's friends just had stolen Sharon Needles' crown. I don't know how. I think security maybe wasn't as good back in those days. And apparently they just opened the trunk of their car and Sharon's crown was just inside. And Violet didn't really know what to do, but eventually she ended up posing with the crown naked and she posted it as her Facebook profile picture. And then later on, Violet said that the producers knew about it and she thinks that's why she was then invited to audition for season 7. And the last item on this second level is Derek's hat, which is a really random one, but I thought I'd include it because it's so silly. But basically, we all know Derek Barry competed on season 8 and All Stars 5. And when All Stars 5 was being rumoured to, and it hadn't come out yet, but it was rumoured, there were rumours going around on Reddit that Derek walked in her entrance look wearing a hat. And then when the actual season came out and we saw that Derek was indeed wearing a hat, people were just kind of gagged because people thought that this thing about wearing a hat was fake, but it actually turned out to be true. Okay, so next on the list we have Farrah's reveal. So this is referring to Farrah Moan, who was on season 9 and All Stars 4. And you may remember that on season 9, the first episode, they had Lady Gaga as the special guest. And at one point, they had to do a runway of one of Lady Gaga's famous outfits. And Farrah Moan did a look, and I believe it was from the Alejandra music video, and it was a sort of white number with red on it. And the judges made a remark that it looked like it was going to be a reveal, but then Farrah didn't actually take anything off. And then in Untucked, they did actually show Farrah talking to Lady Gaga, and she said that it was a reveal, and she sort of revealed underneath that she had this black latex number.
I do wish that there was a tearaway under this.
There is.
Oh.
Oh.
And obviously lots of people at the time questioned, well, why didn't Farrah actually do the reveal? Because it looked like she was going to.
I almost did it. When I walked down, I grabbed it, and then I was like, oh, I shouldn't.
And Farrah then later admitted on a TikTok post, I believe, that apparently what happened was that when they were backstage, one of the production staff put a wire mic on her and basically said, you can't take the jacket off because it will break the mic. So Farrah felt like she actually couldn't take off the top. And then she did apparently admit this in Untucked to Lady Gaga and the rest of them, but they cut it out of the broadcast because you're not allowed to talk about production on the show. So they made it look like Farrah just didn't do the reveal, but actually apparently it was because Farrah was told not to do it because of the mic. And the final item for the third level is Ru versus Matthew. And this is referring to RuPaul, obviously, and Matthew Anderson. I have mentioned this briefly on one of my videos before, but Matthew Anderson used to be RuPaul's personal makeup stylist and also hairstylist, I believe. And he worked from season 1 all the way up to season 9. And then he sort of mysteriously left, and then Delta work and Raven came in to do RuPaul's hair and makeup instead. And there have been lots of rumors over the years about what happened to Matthew, but it's quite a big story. Matthew's been asked about it before in interviews and things. Willem once spilled in an interview that apparently Matthew had been having some health issues, like mental health issues and things, and there had been some kind of fallout between Matthew and RuPaul and also World of Wonder, and Matthew basically quit, and apparently RuPaul wouldn't go and visit Matthew in the hospital or something like that, so there seemed to be some kind of issue between them. But there's this big rumor that apparently there was this big showdown in episode 1 of season 9, which is when Matthew quit, and apparently, although this is a rumor, apparently Matthew wanted a raise and asked for a raise, like, as in more money, to be on the show. And apparently he was told no. And so he had a really big blowout argument with RuPaul. And apparently he got one of RuPaul's wigs and dumped it in a bucket full of water and then walked out. And then other rumors have said that he got the wet wig from the bucket and then put it on RuPaul's head. And obviously that part sounds to me a little bit like it could not be true. I mean, maybe there was a wig in water, who knows? But it's just one of those things that's kind of become famous in the Drag Race rumor world. So now moving on to the 4th level, we have Robbie Turner and the Uber scandal. I did talk about this in one of, I think it was my first ever video, but Robbie Turner was on season 8 and was quite a popular contestant. And they had this weird thing happen where Robbie posted, after Drag Race, Robbie posted saying that they had been in an accident in an Uber and their driver had died. And obviously at the beginning, everyone was really like, oh, are you okay? And everything like that. And then Uber released a message, the official Uber account, saying that no fatalities had been recorded. And the police in the area also confirmed there had been no fatalities listed. And so people then started to question whether what Robbie said was true. And then Robbie later admitted that it was all made up and it hadn't happened. And Robbie said that their drink had been spiked or they had fallen in the shower and hit their head. There were kind of lots of different reasons, but they then kind of retreated from social media and they haven't been seen since on social media. And obviously it was a bit of a random thing. People wanted to know what actually happened, why Robbie lied, or did they really have some kind of mental health issue? And people never really found out because Robbie has just been completely silent since then. Although there have been rumors that Robbie now works for Uber, but I don't know if that's true. And the last one on level 4 is Soju's casting. So you may remember that Soju is from season 11, and at the beginning they did talk about it briefly, but Soju was quite well known and had quite a big social media presence when they were cast on Drag Race. And they had a YouTube account that they had, and they did this thing called Shot with Soju, which is when they would interview other Drag Race queens and get behind the scenes tea. And there's a rumor that's going around saying that Soju was cast deliberately on Drag Race because Drag Race wanted to stop her from being able to do the YouTube series anymore because of the NDA. And I think this rumor gained some traction because after season 11, Soju's career sort of started to decline and didn't do as many YouTube things. And since then, there's also been some allegations of misconduct or abuse by Soju to different people. And Soju has since quit drag, then came back to drag for a while, and I think they've now quitted again, and their social media accounts have been deactivated. So quite a lot of people think that this thing about Drag Race deliberately bringing Soju on to stop Soju from doing this YouTube series is actually true. But who knows? It's just a rumor. So now we're moving on to the 5th level of the iceberg, which is Stacey on All Stars 4. So this is referring to Stacey Lane Matthews, who competed on season 3. And it was heavily rumoured that she was going to appear on All Stars 4, but then in the end, it actually turned out that she was in one of the episodes as the guest, and she also appeared a couple of times throughout the series in acting challenges and things like that, but she wasn't actually a contestant. And then there was a rumor going around that she was actually cast on the show, but then she was cancelled at the last minute. And Stacey did confirm in a video, she was with Alexis Mateo once on a live video, and she confirmed that she was actually cast on All Stars 4.
Because they convinced me I was on All Stars 4 and made me sign a contract and then called me while I was in Mexico and said, never mind.
And so she was obviously a bit annoyed that she had been cast and thought she was going to get this opportunity, and then she didn't. And there have also been claims, although I don't know if this is true, that apparently she failed the medical, like the medical that you have to go through to get on the show. So that apparently was also one of the reasons why she was cast but then cancelled. And finally on this level, we have Blair leaked by TMZ. So this is referring to Blair St. Clair, who competed on season 10 and All Stars 5. I'm sure many of you are aware, TMZ is a kind of gossipy pop culture news outlet. And they actually leaked that Blair St. Clair was on Drag Race for season 10 before the official cast announcement had been made. And it was because Blair had got a DUI before in Indiana, and apparently wasn't supposed to leave the state because that's the rule that you can't leave the state. But apparently she did and had to go to California to film Drag Race for season 10. And then TMZ reported on it and said that Blair St. Clair, I don't know who, but someone had basically informed the authorities that Blair had left the state, even though she wasn't supposed to. And then they also found out that she was going to film Drag Race. And then TMZ reported on this. And that's how Blair was leaked as being part of season 10 before the official cast announcements. So moving on to the 6th level of the iceberg, we have Patricia Quinn. Some of you remember that Aiden Zane on season 12 did Patricia Quinn, who's an actress who was in the Rocky Horror Picture Show, among other things. But Aiden did Patricia on Snatch Game and didn't really do a very good job. Well, after season 12 came out and the Snatch Game episode aired, Patricia Quinn herself actually reacted and sort of addressed Aiden's portrayal of her, and she said that she was disgusted by what she saw. So to quote Patricia exactly, she wrote on Instagram saying, "I am disgusted beyond belief at how I was portrayed on RuPaul's Drag Race. I was flattered that a young person wanted to portray me on a popular TV show, but unfortunately this is where the flattery ends. I did not respect being described as an old kooky woman or being depicted as a washed-up actress who has taken too many drugs. I wish Aiden had given me the common courtesy of a heads up, and maybe I could have given him a few lines, etc. to say on the show." And you may remember also on season 12 that Sherry Pie, who was obviously disqualified for other reasons on season 12, but Sherry Pie did Katharine Hepburn for her Snatch Game. And Patricia Quinn also criticised Sherry Pie and said that she thought that it was tasteless that people were laughing at Katharine Hepburn's neurological disorder because she had a tremor and the way that she spoke and things like that. And so Patricia Quinn also called out Drag Race for laughing and making light of Katharine Hepburn's neurological disorder. And finally, for this level, we have edited mirror messages. So obviously we all know that the mirror message is when the queens come out and write on the lip with the lipstick on the mirror. And this was started by Shangela on season 2 because Shangela didn't have a chance to say goodbye to the girls. So she just picked up the lipstick because it was the only thing she could find. So she actually started this trend. But the lipstick messages, there's been some accusations that some of them were kind of edited or changed by production because they didn't want certain things coming out. And one of these accusations was that Mariah Paris Balenciaga's mirror message was edited out by production. And apparently Mariah had written "Congratulations, Raja," because she was saying that Raja was going to win season 3. And when you watch the footage, you can see that it was actually blurred out in the actual broadcast. But then in another shot, you can see what she did right. And it's never been talked about or never been 100% confirmed, but we can see from the sort of the zoom in shot that is what she wrote. And Raja did end up winning. So this is one of those things that people say clearly production didn't want to make it obvious that Raja was going to win, almost implying that maybe Raja was almost destined to win from the start and Mariah was kind of calling them out about it. So for the 7th level down, which is the penultimate level, the first one we have is Gigi's disqualification. And this is a complete rumor, I'll just say this from the start, but this is about Gigi Goode from season 12, who, as we know, did very well on the season and she made it to the final 3. And I'm sure you'll remember that on season 12, they filmed it before COVID happened, but then while it was airing, that's when COVID and lockdown happened. And so the finale for season 12 was a virtual finale, and they had to do it via Zoom, and it was Gigi, Crystal Method, and Jada Essence Hall. And the rule was apparently that the queens had to do this final number from their own homes, and they were all given the same amount of time and materials in order to do it, and they could sort of choose how they did it. But there is a rumor, and I couldn't find any evidence to support this, but it has been going around for a long time. But apparently Gigi, again, this is alleged, but apparently Gigi hired a warehouse space and she filmed her bit in that. But then when she sent it in, the producer said, no, you have to do it in your own home. We told you so. And apparently she should have been disqualified because she had broken the rules, not only the rules of the competition, but also the COVID lockdown rules at the time with social distancing and things like that, and mixing with other households. And apparently the rumor is that because Gigi was a production favorite, they didn't want to disqualify her because they'd already disqualified Sherry Pie, who was also supposed to be in the finale for season 12, and they couldn't disqualify a second person from the competition from the final 4. So apparently production just kind of didn't do anything and just said, you have to redo it, but in your own home. But apparently some people say that's why Gigi definitely was never going to win season 12, because she had basically gone against production and broken the rules. But as I said, I couldn't find any actual concrete evidence to support this, but it has been a rumor for many years. And next we have RuPaul versus Azealia Banks. So some of you may know Azealia Banks is an American singer, and there was a bit of drama that happened a while back where Azealia sued or tried to take RuPaul to court because apparently RuPaul had ripped off her song The Big Beat with RuPaul's song Call Me Mother, and there was some apparently plagiarism.
Guess who up in this bitch? Catch you ducking this clip. Dick who wanted my nigga is nothing. Guess who back in the house? Heels click clack in a bound. Fine fresh feminine style to 11 I'm divine.
And Azealia Banks then threatened to take legal action, and at one point RuPaul's album called American, which is the album that Call Me Mother was on, was removed from Spotify and other streaming services. And then Azealia Banks has also said some quite questionable and quite rude things about RuPaul, but also the wider LGBT plus community. So there was a tweet that Azealia did where she said, "You will not step on my little black girl toes, B. You will take your razor bumps and pumps to the nearest laser hair removal clinic and seethe at RuPaul. Bye ugly." And obviously many people, including some Drag Race queens, called out Azealia for this slightly rude wording and also quite mean stuff that she was saying. And Azealia has also said some other quite problematic things like that. So now we're moving on to the 8th and final level of the iceberg, which is basically the most niche and quite not that well known stuff about Drag Race. So the first one we have on the list is T-Rex. This isn't directly related to RuPaul's Drag Race, but it kind of is. So for those of you who don't know, T-Rex is a Chicago-based drag queen who hasn't been on Drag Race, but was quite well known in the Chicago drag scene and quite powerful. And a lot of people expected them to be on Drag Race one day because they were so well known. And they also were quite good friends with a lot of the other Chicago-based queens who were on Drag Race. But then T-Rex was basically accused of lots of things to do with things like racism and abusing their power within the community and things like that. And T-Rex also used to work as one of the hosts at Roscoe's, which many of you will know from my channel. I talk a lot about Roscoe's. So T-Rex used to be one of the hosts at Roscoe's, but was then let go because of all of these accusations that happened. And one thing that's to do with Drag Race is that they one time did this thing called a town hall, which was basically a virtual meeting that they had where they were sort of addressing what T-Rex had done, and T-Rex was on the call, and they were sort of talking about how they could go forward and what T-Rex needed to do to make amends for what they had done. And at one point, Shea Coulee, who is obviously from Drag Race, she was on multiple seasons, she's from Chicago originally, she was on the call and she basically said that there was one time before Shea was on Drag Race, I believe, where apparently she was speaking to T-Rex and T-Rex suggested an idea for a show.
You had made a joke that for Black History Month, it would be funny as a number, as a cast, if we performed to Britney Spears' Slave for You, with me dressed as a slave while the rest of you whipped me.
And obviously this was widely criticized. This is obviously a horrible idea, really racist. And Shea did call T-Rex out on this call, and T-Rex admitted to making that suggestion. And this is just one of the things that T-Rex did. There were also lots of other things. I won't talk about all of it now, but it basically was like one of those big things that happened that, although it was quite big in the community at the time, the Drag Race community didn't necessarily know that much about it, but it is quite a big thing because lots of Drag Race people knew T-Rex, and so they were also involved in it. So it was quite a big thing at the time, but not that widely talked about. And finally on this level, we have Puerto Vallarta, which some of you may have heard of, some of you might know it, but I'll give a rundown. It's kind of complicated, but I'll try and, as usual, explain it in the most concise way possible. So many of you may have heard of, Puerto Vallarta is in Mexico. It's a city, and it's kind of a resort city. So it's where people go for parties, beach time, things like that. And it's quite well known for what they call circuit parties, which are basically big dance parties that usually go on throughout the night into the morning. And they're quite popular, particularly with gay men. And it's quite a well-known thing that these things happen. And they're not necessarily illegal or anything like that, but they've developed a slightly negative reputation because they're not always particularly inclusive in terms of the types of people that go to these events, as you can see from a few of the pictures that I'm putting up. And some people may remember that during sort of 2020, 2021, which was COVID times with lockdown, a lot of celebrities and influencers and just regular people were obviously, a lot of countries like the US had gone into lockdown. You weren't allowed to leave your home, or you were only allowed to mix with people in your own household. But a lot of people were traveling to places like Mexico where the rules weren't the same, and they were going to these sorts of parties. And a lot of famous people were getting called out on social media for breaking COVID rules in Mexico. And that's where Drag Race comes in, because several Drag Race queens around that time were caught going to Puerto Vallarta for parties and breaking lockdown rules. As I said, it's quite complicated, but I found this really interesting Reddit thread. I'll put a link in the description so you can read it, but I will just sort of give the highlights of it. But basically, it first started out that Vanessa Vanjie Mateo and Silky Nutmeg Ganache, some video footage emerged of them at one of these parties in Puerto Vallarta, and they weren't wearing masks, so they were breaking COVID rules. And then after that, some footage of Shangela also came out of her also not wearing a mask at one of these parties. And then there was also Alyssa Edwards. And then the whole thing kind of blew up on social media because obviously a lot of people criticized them for going because it was against the rules of COVID, traveling, not mixing, and obviously spreading COVID, and that's quite dangerous, and lots of people unfortunately died from COVID. So a lot of people and a lot of Drag Race queens, such as Jeremy Carey, formerly known as Fifi O'Hara, among other people, called out these queens for going to Puerto Vallarta. But then some of the queens denied that they did actually go, but then that kind of turned out to not be true. So it's assumed that they lied, but then got found out that they had lied, that they did actually go to these parties. And apparently Pheromone also called out people like Silky because of this footage that emerged. And then apparently Silky blocked Farrah on social media because of it. There was also a moment apparently when Shangela went on Instagram Live in Puerto Vallarta, but then quickly sort of ended the live because people were calling her out in the comments on the live. And then there was also a moment where apparently Shangela was photographed giving out like food and supplies, hygiene supplies to people in Puerto Vallarta. But a lot of people were saying it was just a publicity stunt to try and make herself seem less guilty, to try and sort of throw people off criticizing her for going to these parties in the first place. And there were kind of various different responses. So, for example, apparently Silky said that she wasn't going to apologize, and if people wanted an apology, they should book a cameo of her for the apology. And then she also said that it was the president's fault for the COVID situation, not her.
And all I got to say to this is, I did what I did with no regrets. And if you want to be mad at anybody, your president of the United States has done nothing for the coronavirus.
Vanjie, I think, just didn't really say anything, and she never really addressed the accusations. But then Shangela did address the rumors, and there were lots of reasons. She said, for example, that she owns a timeshare in Puerto Vallarta, and I think she was going to sort of for a mental health break. She said that she was wearing a mask the entire time, apart from when the photos were taken, which is the photos that were shared on social media. So she was saying that they were kind of shared out of context. And she also said that they were COVID tested every day while they were filming the show We're Here, which is something that Shangela was part of. So Shangela was saying that a lot of these accusations were false or were kind of one-sided, not giving the context. But in general, this Puerto Vallarta thing, the reason I included it is because it happened and it was actually quite big within, I guess, the social media world, but I feel like it wasn't that widely known by the Drag Race community, and it actually involved lots of different Drag Race queens, and we never necessarily got a resolution to it. And then obviously COVID, the rules ended and it went back to sort of normal, so people haven't really talked about it. But I thought it was quite interesting, and I did some research on it because I didn't know the full story, and that's why I decided to include it in the final level of this iceberg. Hello everyone, and welcome back for some more Drag Race gossip, secrets and drama. So we're going to start off at the top of the iceberg, which is fake reactions. As we all know, Drag Race is a reality show, so as Tatiana would say, what you see isn't always the truth. But what you may not know is the contestants are often asked to fake their reactions to things because it looks better on camera. And Trinity the Tuck once talked about this and said that on her season, so on season 9 and also All Stars 4 and then eventually All Stars 7, apparently there were a few times where RuPaul would come in and announce the guest judge for that week. And obviously on screen, we always see all of the contestants cheering and going, oh my God, I can't believe it. But Trinity admitted that most of the time, no one knew who any of the guest judges were. And then they would all just kind of not really react. And so the producers would then say, we need you to pretend that you do know who this person is. So they would make the queens then refilm their reactions of being all excited about the guest judges. And this is probably not that surprising, but I thought it was just an interesting thing that Trinity actually shared that this does happen. So moving on next to Jiggly's hotel letter. If you've been following my channel for a while, you'll know I have talked about this in a few videos. But on season 4, you may remember there was the lovable Jiggly Caliente. And in the episode that she went home on, in the Untucked episode, if you watch it, you'll see that Jiggly is obviously really upset and she's crying. And there's a sort of rumor that's not really ever been substantiated, but she's holding a piece of paper in her hand in Untucked. There's a rumor that Jiggly received a checkout letter from the hotel that she and the other contestants were staying at. And apparently that meant, according to some people, that Jiggly's elimination was pre-planned because she'd already been checked out of the hotel even before she had done her lip sync. And this would imply as though eliminations are pre-written and predestined before the lip sync even happens. And I don't believe Jiggly has ever confirmed this, or anyone else for that matter, but there is a rumor online that apparently there was an edit of that scene during Untucked where Jiggly is crying, and apparently she said something along the lines of, none of you received the letter, and apparently she's holding the letter in her hand, but this whole bit was then cut out of the final broadcast and it only existed on a few platforms and was then removed. And so moving on to the final one on this level is a lifetime supply of makeup. You may remember that on some of the seasons of Drag Race, one of the prizes for the winner was a lifetime supply of makeup. And I guess that doesn't really mean anything, like what is a lifetime supply of makeup? And so it was quite interesting that one time this was talked about by Tyra Sanchez, who won season 2, who now goes by the name James Ross. And James said that because apparently NYX Cosmetics, who was the sponsor at the time for the makeup, sent a letter to James after James won saying that they couldn't keep up their end of the bargain. And instead of giving them a lifetime supply, they gave them $10,000 to spend because they calculated that that's what the average person would spend on makeup over their lifetime.
Did you get your lifetime supply of NYX Cosmetics?
So before they aired that I was the winner, NYX sent me a letter, and it told me that they were not going to be able to hold up their end of the bargain as long as they thought that they could. A lifetime supply of makeup is $10,000.
And I think this is just an interesting fact because on the show, they always kind of make out as though, you know, you get a lifetime supply of makeup with a big chest full of makeup that gets sent to your house or whatever it might be. But in reality, James confirmed that it was actually just $10,000 to spend all at once. And then it's your choice to then keep that makeup and do whatever you want with it over your lifetime. Okay, so moving on to the second tier on the iceberg, we have fake Jasmine Masters. So you may remember that Jasmine Masters was on season 7 and All Stars 4, and she was also on the Holly Slay Christmas Spectacular. I have talked about this on my channel before, but there was a lot of drama with that Holly Slay Spectacular, in particular between Jasmine and Shangela. And according to Jasmine, Shangela arrived late and was basically being a diva, and Jasmine wasn't having it, so Jasmine actually left and quit halfway through filming and left the set. And this is apparently why Jasmine's confessionals and things aren't really featured very heavily, because she left. And so there's a fan theory that because Jasmine was wearing this sort of net bag thing over her head, that in some of the wider shots that happened in the latter part of the episode, which was after Jasmine had quit and left, there's a theory that one of the producers or members of staff put on this net over their head and just pretended to be Jasmine in the background. And in some of the shots, you can kind of see that maybe it does look like that could be true, although this has never actually been confirmed. And one other bit of information about the Holly Slay Spectacular is that after this all happened, Shangela and Jasmine allegedly spoke, and Shangela actually explained that her lateness to set, which is what caused Jasmine to react, was actually already sanctioned and approved by World of Wonder, but they just didn't tell the girls that she was going to be late because Shangela was on tour at the time and she was flying in from another place. And that's why all the girls, particularly Jasmine, were annoyed because Shangela was late, although that had already been approved. And on top of that, allegedly, Shangela was also partly late because she was arguing with some of the producers because she was trying to convince them to pay the other queens more money for the time that they had been on set waiting for her. So if that is true, then it would kind of justify why Shangela was late, but I couldn't find any concrete evidence that this is actually true. These are all just rumors. And the next one on this tier is Deja's solo lip sync. I have talked about this in a few videos, but there was a rumor that Deja Skye, who was on season 14, had to do a solo lip sync to a Dua Lipa song on season 14 in the Snatch Game episode, which, as you'll remember, did not go very well for most of the cast. Deja was the only one that was safe. And the rumor was that she did a lip sync to Levitating by Dua Lipa, but it wasn't shown for some reason in the actual episode. And it was never confirmed whether this was or wasn't true, but Deja did kind of allude to it in a TikTok video, which I have talked about in one of my previous videos. But Deja recently confirmed during Bring Back My Girls that this was actually true and she really did do a solo lip sync.
Did you lip sync on the Snatch Game episode? I had a solo lip sync on the episode of Snatch Game. Yes, I did. Even though no one really got to see it, I had my girls behind me, and the entire crew of World of Wonder sat down in front and just let me have my moment.
Although we never found out why it wasn't shown. And the reason I wanted to include that in this list is because Deja actually confirmed it quite recently in Bring Back My Girls. So now moving on to the third tier, we have the Asian Snatch Game curse. This is a bit of a Drag Race theory that has been going around for a while, but on Drag Race UK, if you look at over all of the seasons, pretty much all of the queens that got eliminated on Snatch Game were Asian. And I actually asked LaPhil about this, who appeared on season 4 of Drag Race UK and got eliminated on Snatch Game. And when I asked him about it, he said that because Asians aren't necessarily as prominent in the media, there isn't necessarily that many people to pull from for references, which means that Asians are slightly more limited in terms of who they can actually pick for Snatch Game, and that might be why Snatch Game isn't necessarily something that Asian queens are particularly strong at. And this is just a theory that's been going on for a while, so I thought I would put it on this list. And then the last one on this tier is the All Stars 3 jury twist. As we all remember, on All Stars 3, there was a bit of a twist that at the finale, the eliminated queens came back and they had to actually vote for who they wanted to go to the top 2. And the fan favourite for a lot of people was Shangela, but she didn't get through. And a lot of people then said that it was rigged or that Shangela should have won. But there's a fan theory that Drag Race wanted Trixie to win, but according to the theory, Trixie hadn't done necessarily that well in the first half of the competition and wouldn't necessarily then have been in a winning position above someone like Shangela. So the rumor is that Drag Race created this jury twist in order to make Trixie win, because Trixie had already done quite well with WoW with her show with Katya. So that's apparently why they did that. And obviously this has never been proven. This is just one of those wild fan theories. But when you look at it, a lot would have had to happen for Trixie not to win, because, for example, Ben de la Creme eliminated herself. A lot of the queens kind of turned against Shangela or didn't vote for her for whatever reason. Morgan McNichols also was supposed to be a fan favourite, but got eliminated quite quickly and then came back and got eliminated again. So there are quite a lot of factors that had to kind of come together in order for Trixie to be in a position where she might win. So I'm not sure how much water this holds. And also this theory does kind of discredit all of the good things that Trixie did and kind of implies that she didn't deserve to win, which is obviously not very nice. So as to whether this is true, who knows? But it's an interesting theory and I thought I'd mention it because a lot of people do talk about it. Okay, so moving on to the 4th level down on the iceberg, we have the original Sherry Pie edit. Again, this is a sort of fan theory mixed with maybe a little bit of truth. But obviously we remember that on season 12, Sherry Pie got eliminated because all these allegations of abuse and manipulation came to light after filming had already happened. So the editors had to edit Sherry out of the show as much as possible. But there have been a few instances over the years where people said that the streaming platforms outside of the US got the original edit where Sherry was fully featured because she obviously made it to top 4 and she was quite a prominent contestant. And there have been some examples of certain scenes where you can see that Sherry was originally quite heavily featured in that scene, but then was since edited out. And so the theory is that there, somewhere in the vaults of World of Wonder, does exist the original Sherry Pie edit. Which obviously is true. We all know they would have kept that footage, but they just didn't show it. There is also a rumor that's been going around and a theory that had Sherry not been disqualified, Sherry obviously got to top 4. There was apparently a big storyline where Sherry and Gigi Good had a lot of confrontation, and it was actually kind of a villain storyline for the two of them. And also Jada was somehow involved in it as well. But then because Sherry got edited out, all of that storyline had to go. But that's only a rumor, and I'm not sure that's ever actually been confirmed. And then last on this level, we have Derek Barry. Oh my God, who did this? So this is referring to an internet rumor that then turned into a joke. So we all remember Derek Barry from season 8 and All Stars 5. Well, before Derek got on All Stars 5, there was this thing that happened in 2018 when Derek tweeted saying #Derek Barry for All Stars 4 and then said, oh my God, who did this? And then someone copied that hashtag on Twitter and searched for any other tweets that used that hashtag. And the only one that used it was Derek. And so people then were kind of making out like Derek was pretending that someone else had written it when Derek was the one that actually started this hashtag. And it's since become a joke now, and people use a hashtag for anything and then say, oh my God, who did this? And I think this was probably just supposed to be a joke, and Derek knew that she had started this hashtag and people were going to find out. I don't think it was really meant seriously to try and lie or anything like that. I think it was just a joke, but it's since become quite a funny internet meme that whenever there's a new hashtag, people do some random hashtag and say, oh my God, who did this? Okay, so now we're moving on to the 5th tier, and we have Fifi's All Stars 2 edit. So Fifi O'Hara, who now goes by the name Jeremy Carey, competed on season 4 and All Stars 2. And you may remember that Fifi kind of became a sort of villain on All Stars 2. And there was a famous moment where Fifi, or Jeremy, came into the workroom after Alyssa was eliminated and started talking badly about Alyssa. And then the other eliminated queens, including Alyssa, flashed up in the mirror behind them. And this was a really gaggy moment. And then we know, obviously, later on in the season, Fifi was eliminated and then didn't come to the reunion and has since kind of fallen out with World of Wonder and Drag Race and RuPaul and things like that. And Fifi was kind of known as the villain of Drag Race. But information has come out since then, and apparently what actually happened was that when Fifi was talking about Alyssa in the workroom, what actually happened is that other queens around the table, not just Fifi, were agreeing that Alyssa had been treated differently and preferably by the judges. And so apparently they were kind of agreeing with what Fifi was saying. It wasn't just Fifi saying it, other people were also saying it. But then they wanted to push this narrative of Fifi versus Alyssa and this kind of rivalry. So they then cut out all of the other queens talking about Alyssa. But in reality, according to the rumors, Fifi wasn't the only one talking about Alyssa. Everyone had been saying mean things about Alyssa and almost were backing Fifi up during the arguments. But then Drag Race didn't want to show any of that because it didn't align with this narrative that they had created. One thing I forgot to mention also is that Jeremy claimed that the critiques that were negative for Alyssa were edited out and made it look like they were for Jeremy instead. So Drag Race actually did this thing where they released the full uncut version of the critiques that showed that Jeremy was lying and that they did give Alyssa negative critiques. They weren't for Jeremy. The video is no longer active. It's been deleted, but people say that it was a completely unedited video with no music or anything that showed both Jeremy and Alyssa's full critiques. And this was one of the first times ever that Drag Race had kind of actively responded to negative criticism from people, and they were kind of proving Jeremy was lying effectively. And then last on this list, we have the Puerto Rico drama. So this is quite complicated. There's quite a lot of layers to this, and it's mostly rumors and speculation, but I'll try and explain it in the most succinct way possible. So as we know, there's been a lot of Puerto Rican queens on Drag Race, and in the earlier seasons, there tended to be at least 1 or 2 per season. So you had people like Alexis Mateo and Yara Sofia and several other people. But the drama is that there is a rumor that has some level of credence to it, but they're not sure 100% if it is true. Puerto Rico, or the queens in Puerto Rico, were trying to kind of game the system in order to get more Puerto Rican queens and control who was getting onto the show. So from what I understand, how it works, or the theory is that in Puerto Rico, there are about 4 really powerful drag houses, or sort of drag families. And the rumor is that these drag families effectively controlled the drag scene, and they would decide which queens to put forward to audition for Drag Race, because they knew that usually for each season, at least 1 or 2 Puerto Rican queens get cast. So the rumor is that these drag houses were controlling who was allowed to audition from Puerto Rico. But allegedly, Madame LaQueer, who was on season 4, didn't tell anybody that she had auditioned and then got on the show. And allegedly, the other drag queens then in Puerto Rico were angry at Madame LaQueer for getting on the show and not telling anyone, and sort of breaking this system that they had of controlling who could audition. And other people have alleged that this is why Kenya Michaels, who was also on season 4 and is from Puerto Rico, was quite almost rude to Madame LaQueer, because The theory is that Kenya Michaels was supposed to be the only Puerto Rican queen on season 4 and have a better shot at winning, but then she found out that Madame LaQueer had kind of secretly auditioned and got on. I couldn't really find any information or evidence to support this, but I did find somewhere that Linacia Sparks, who is on season 5 and is also from Puerto Rico, is technically, apparently, the drag daughter of Madame LaQueer, but has denied and sort of shunned Madame LaQueer as her drag mother because Madame LaQueer did this. And there's also another element to the story that apparently these drag houses, what they would do is they really wanted to increase the chances of a Puerto Rican queen getting on Drag Race and also winning. So what they would do is each contestant who applied would also have a kind of buddy who they would kind of confide in, and they would tell them when they got off the show what place they got, who got eliminated when, what the judges' critiques were, and all that sort of thing, so that that buddy could then apply for the next season and kind of learn a lot more things and kind of have a head up in the competition. And so you had people like, for example, April Carrion on season 6. And at one point, she did wear a t-shirt that said Candy Ho on it because they're from the same drag house. And it's alleged that Candy Ho was April's buddy. And then she got on season 7 and also apparently was trying this kind of villain storyline because they had this idea that April didn't last very long on season 6 because she was quite quiet. So they tried to then push this narrative of Candy being the villain in the hopes that she would potentially get further in the competition. And that's also why apparently Candy did that thing when she walked in and she asked Tempest du Jour, how old are you? To try and push this villain storyline.
Tempest, she's an old-fashioned drag. She tries to be funny, I guess. Oh so how old are you?
Oh! How old am I?
How old?
Really?
But again, these are complete rumors, but this then apparently led to Drag Race found out that these Puerto Rican houses had been controlling who was auditioning, and they were kind of annoyed by it. And that's why there was actually a really long break between many of the seasons, kind of in the middle of Drag Race, didn't have any Puerto Rican queens. Again, this is all completely alleged and it's just a fan theory, but I thought it was just really interesting. And I'm sure if you delve into it, you might be able to find some information and your own research on it. So now moving on to the 6th layer down, we have Manila's period dress. Some of you may have heard about this before, and Manila has posted about this, but on All Stars 4, for one of the runways, Manila was going to wear a dress that was a kind of sanitary towel with blood on it, which was obviously to do with periods and menstruation. And Manila posted about this on her Instagram and said that this is what she wanted to wear for this runway. But apparently the Drag Race producers said that it was in, quote, poor taste, and they wouldn't let her wear it. And I think people were kind of shocked in a way that Manila kind of admitted this, and it was one of the first times we've heard that queens were told they weren't allowed to wear a particular outfit on the runway. And we'd heard rumors about queens being told you can't wear certain things in the past, but this was one of the first sort of documented cases where a queen actually admitted to it, and she also posted a picture of the kind of forbidden runway. And then last on this tier, we have Meghan Trainor sandwich. So this is something that actually happened kind of recently, which is why I'm putting it on the list. So you may remember that Meghan Trainor is obviously she's an American singer, very famous. She was on an episode of season 9 as a guest judge, and she was wearing the unicorn onesie. And this rumor started that allegedly Meghan Trainor ate a sandwich that belonged to one of the drag queens. And this rumor kind of spread, as they often do. And Trinity the Tuck talked about it once on a podcast episode with Monet Exchange. And Trinity said that she didn't really get a good feeling from Meghan and felt like Meghan was quite disrespectful on set and didn't want to be there, according to Trinity. And Trinity also said that she heard that when they were in the break room and they had obviously the catering table with all the food, Meghan Trainor came in and said, I want this sandwich. And someone said, oh, it's for one of the queens. And Meghan allegedly said, well, I don't care, I'm still going to take the sandwich, and then ate the sandwich. And then the drag queen who it was supposed to be for had to then go and get lunch elsewhere because Meghan had eaten their lunch. And this rumor was obviously kind of sounds really ridiculous, but it spread a lot. And also one time Arsha and Shea Coulee kind of joked about it on social media. But the reason I'm including it now in this video is because pretty recently, Shea Coulee actually admitted that she made up this rumor and it never happened. So Shea was at the Streamy Awards and Meghan Trainor was also there. And Shea, and it's this, you can look up this video, I'll show a clip of it. Shea was kind of presenting at this award ceremony. And at one point, Shea walked up to Meghan, who was in the audience, and basically admitted that she had joked about this rumor and kind of started it accidentally, and then it kind of got out of hand. And Shea admitted that it was all made up and it never happened.
When you were on Drag Race as a guest judge, you ate a drag queen sandwich. I made that rumor up. And I'm so sorry. It was me, and I just feel so bad, and I just want to let you know I said it as a joke once on the mic.
And so this is just one of those rumors that kind of spread, but I thought it was interesting because it's finally been debunked by the person themselves. So now we're moving on to the penultimate level of the iceberg, and we have peppermint elimination. I've talked about this on multiple other videos, but we all know by now that on Drag Race, the final 3 or 4 have to film themselves winning because they don't want to spoil it or whoever. So they make each of the contestants film themselves winning, and then they only use that one edit of the queen that did win in the final broadcast to make sure no one knows who won. And the same thing is also true of eliminations. And other queens have also said the same thing, that they had to film their own sort of elimination, even though they didn't get eliminated. But Peppermint, who was on season 9, once confirmed in an interview with Joseph Shepherd that for the season 9 final episode before the finale, they were convinced that one of them was going to be eliminated because there had never been a top 4 before that. There had only been a top 3. And Peppermint admitted that she was the one that actually got eliminated and she had to leave. But they also made them film a sort of 4-way tie where no one got eliminated and they all went to the finale. But Peppermint was kind of convinced that she was going to be eliminated because she had filmed an elimination and none of the other 3 did. And she only found out that she wasn't eliminated when we all found out as well at the same time when it was broadcast on TV. And Peppermint said that when it came out on TV, she was really shocked because she didn't think she was going to get into the final 4. And one of the producers called her and confirmed that she was in the final 4 and said, basically, get ready because we've never done anything like this. We've never had a top 4 and it's going to go off because it's going to be so cool. But the reason this is interesting is because we don't necessarily ever get to hear about these backstage production things when queens get eliminated. So I thought it was interesting to include on this list. And then last on this level, we have Alyssa left All Stars 2. So you may remember that on All Stars 2, there was a lot of drama, as we saw on the show, between the contestants. And one of the big storylines that they kept talking about was that Alyssa was getting sort of preferential treatment. And sometimes the judges were saying, oh, it's okay because you're Alyssa and you get away with it. And then this rumor started that Alyssa left the competition at some point to go and film something, but it never really got confirmed. But then Miley Cyrus herself confirmed in an interview, and it's unclear whether she was supposed to say this or not, but she confirmed that she actually got permission for Alyssa to leave the set of All Stars 2 so that she could go and film Miley Cyrus's VMA performance with the House of Edwards.
Alyssa Edwards was filming All Stars and they let her off set just to come do this performance.
Miley explained in the video that she had seen the House of Edwards perform at the Drag Race finale the season before, and she really loved them and wanted them to be part of her VMAs. And so she got permission for Alyssa to kind of be snuck out during the filming of All Stars 2 to go and do this performance. And there's also another layer to the rumor that I found online that said that Miley Cyrus originally asked for permission for Alyssa to come and film this VMA thing, but allegedly the Drag Race producers said no. But because obviously Miley Cyrus is Miley Cyrus, and she was performing at the VMAs, which is owned by MTV, and at the time Drag Race was still on Logo, and they're owned by the same parent company. So apparently Miley Cyrus went over the Drag Race producer's head and went straight to the head of the network, and the head of the network agreed and let Alyssa leave All Stars 2 filming so that she could go and do this VMA thing. And again, this part of the rumor hasn't been confirmed, but there are perhaps some elements that might suggest that it is true. Okay, so now we're on the final level of the iceberg, which basically means the most obscure or weird things. And these two things are quite weird. So the first one is Jinx is a furry. So this one is a total weird thing that happened in the fandom. So if any of you don't know, a furry is someone, it's a subset or a group of people who enjoy dressing up as what they call anthropomorphic animals. So animals that kind of look and act like humans, and they wear sort of like these suits. And there's also a kind of sexual connotation to do with this community as well. And this fan theory started that Jinx is a furry. And the way it seemed to start, from what I could find, is that Jinx posted a photo of a dog, which is a cartoon, and said that this was her and how she was feeling. And someone asked, "Oh, are you a dog?" And then Jinx said, "Well, furries have feelings too." And then later on, Jinx tweeted confirming that she is a furry. And so now people have these ideas that Jinx is a furry and enjoys doing some kind of sexual things to do with the furries. But this part hasn't been confirmed. I'm not sure if it was just a joke, but it's definitely one of the really weird fan theories that are out there. So that's why I put it on this level of the iceberg. And the final one for this iceberg is Nina West's foot. So there's this weird rumor or fan theory, I suppose, that started saying that Nina West, who was on season 11, has a foot. And the reason that this started is because Nina did a performance in Liverpool in the UK, I believe it was. And at one point, she invited this guy, I think his name is Matt, great name, who is one of the Brit crew members, so one of the pit crew, but for the UK. And he was invited up onto stage. And there is footage of this happening. It's from a YouTube channel. And Nina did this performance with the song Foot, or she talked about foot. And she sort of touches this guy's foot. And at one point, she puts the foot in her mouth and sucks his toes. And it's obviously quite an unusual video. We don't know whether Nina genuinely has a foot. Obviously, if she does, that's up to her. But it's kind of just become one of those really, really weird fan theories. And now people always say that Nina West must have a foot. And there is evidence apparently out there in this performance. So there was part 2 of the Drag Race iceberg with more unknown drama secrets and fan theories about Drag Race that you may not have known about. Let me know in the comments if you knew about any of these before and which ones surprised you the most. And also let me know if there are any other theories or anything you want me to include in any future videos. Thanks very much for watching, and I hope you'll join me again in future videos. Thank you, bye! And I'd just like to say a massive thank you to all of my Patreons. You are all absolute legends, and your support really does make such a massive difference to my channel, so thank you all so much. If you'd like to join my Patreon and get exclusive benefits, such as early access to my videos, shoutouts in my videos, as well as priority access when submitting interview questions, among other benefits, you can join my Patreon for just a few dollars a month to unlock these amazing benefits, and I'll put a link in the description. Please make sure you like, comment and share this video, as it really helps support my channel. And of course, please make sure you hit the subscribe button to stay up to date about new uploads. Thanks for watching, and I hope you'll join me again in future videos. Thank you, bye!